Okay, and
Howdy ho, friends and foes, and welcome to Dad's on Life, your weekly episodic show about parenting from a male perspective. I'm your host, Jay Miles, and with me, as always, are my co-host, Keith Bogan,
hello, sir.
Doug Hamadike,
Good to see you.
and Chad Holloway.
How you doing?
Today, we're going to be talking about cancel culture, double standards, with some of the craziness that has happened, continued to happen over the last few weeks. I will preface this by mentioning the one thing that happened earlier in the week. I had heard about it on either Strange News or as the topic of the 3 at 3 on Q104.3 radio station in New York, a classic rock station. Twitter had a glitch in its system either late end of last weekend, or beginning of this week. I think it was last weekend, where it was banning people for 12 hours strictly for mentioning the word. Now, certain keywords are put into, certain things are put into every social media, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, all of it. One of the keywords that somehow was locking people out of Twitter was the mere mention of the word Memphis. So you couldn't even say, hey, let's go to Memphis. And if you said, let's go to Memphis and go get barbecue, 12 hours, bam, no questions asked.
Look, I heard about that too, and that was obviously a technology glitch. There are other words that are going to, that the algorithms are going to be set for that make sense. That was obviously a mistake. That doesn't. It's as obscene as banning Christmas music, or or trying to cancel Christmas music, or Skunks from 1945. I mean, that would be totally. It's beyond ridiculous because there's no meaning to it at all.
Right. Now, we will get into, the double standards of cancel culture. I mean, of course, the big one last week was the removal of the character Pepe Le Pew from the upcoming Space Jam 2. There was going to be a scene where basketball player LeBron James was going to discuss Pepe Le Pew's habits with him. But basically, they pretty much have removed Pepe Le Pew from the movie entirely. Which, I mean, brings up some odd things to it. But we'll get to that in a few minutes. Who'd like to kick us off here? Well, Keith already kind of did, but who wants to take the ball here?
Yeah, I was just going to say that I guess there's a lot of stories that we could point to, from the girl who was going to start up the Teen Vogue magazine because of something she said in the past, all of a sudden cut her down from what she wrote when she was in 12th grade on Twitter. Got her fired this week. Mm-hmm. And, we could go back and forth on like things that could get canceled and or boycotted, because me and Jason have talked about being boycotted in the past as well. And I just thought it was a very interesting subject that me and Jason also were mentioning, that entails a lot of things besides just cancel culture. But that could be the end game. I would say that Frank Zappa was one of the people that came to mind when we first talked about this on Wednesday, the subject. And one of his quotes was along the lines that progressivism and their agenda only works if we smash all the norms. Right. So with that in mind, you can see a lot of that changing. And is it changing because the people are changing? Is it changing because of media or a political agenda? It all kind of works together. but you can see a lot of the changes that are happening between just what happened in the past 2 years compared to what they were. And I think like when we first talk about the double standard, we have to take in mind that, that there is something that we all agree on, that there is a common principle, and that is based on some kind of morals.
Right.
And when that goes aside, that creates, the double standard.
Mhm.
But the thing is that, when you call out some of these norms, and the answer is that, well, we don't answer to you. Well, that's a breakdown of the total system,
Right.
So, and that's what we're seeing in a lot of things. I think that's getting people very irritated because they're saying, well, we once followed this rule and now you're not. And those people are saying, well, we don't answer to you. We could do as we please,
Right.
So, and then you get a lot of disinformation and hoaxes, which, also cause people to then fear the information that they receive,
Mhm.
and or just a total doubt in the system altogether.
Right.
So I don't know. It's just hard because there's so many agendas that are being pushed all at the same time, and it's just pretty crazy.
Mhm.
But also, some people try to base things on facts that they have, and or are searching for to base things on facts. And Thomas Sowell, like, pointed out this week also, well, in the past, he pointed out that, like, if you go and you start looking for the facts and or present the facts, it's very easily, you could be painted as part of the problem. And I agree with that.
Right.
So yeah. Yeah, kind of lost myself. And yeah. So
I mean,
I was going to say that we also were watching like the thing on Woody Allen done by HBO. And it was,
yeah, Woody versus Mia. Yes.
yeah, and it was interesting, yeah, that they were towards the end, Woody Allen, a lot of people just say that he had the loudest voice and got away with a lot of this stuff. And he's saying, no, I didn't. I just not guilty at all. And it just shows through my entire timeline of things that I'm not. But a lot of people were saying that he used his press people, creating a double standard and using the media to his advantage.
Sure.
And when they're asking like Adrian Brody and all, what do you feel about Woody Allen and a lot of other stars that, like Jerry Seinfeld and all, they couldn't understand how people can't separate the art from the artist. And I kind of agree with that, And Jerry Seinfeld was totally perplexed with Jon Stewart. He's like, how can you not find these things that they did, whether it's Bill Cosby or whatever, still funny, despite what they might have done. So,
Well, it's interesting that that's funny coming from Seinfeld after his indiscretions. Kind of ironic.
right, but it also leads to like a deeper thing of like, well, how far are we going to go back? Which we talked about Dr. Zeus, and it also leads to people like, like Wagner, uh, with his music that they said that he was a highly racist, anti-Semitic person. And
Wagner.
Yeah, right. Sorry. Yeah, my accent and reading things. Even like Dickens and stuff, they said he was another one that used race throughout a lot of his things and all.
Oh,
And how far are we going to go back on some of these things? And do they
well,
really? Go ahead.
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
Oh no, I was going to say, and that this leads to like one of my other thoughts was just like, who is being affected? Are they being affected? Is there really a call for these things, or are we just canceling them just because there's a fear that we're offending somebody?
Right.
So, I mean, I have a lot more points and stuff, and how it also pertains to my kid, but that's enough for the moment, I guess.
I mean, there this goes back a long way. You're talking about, you can go back to there was calls to boycott Disney, cancel Disney, this and that, several years ago when the reports of anti-Semitism by Walt Disney came out. I mean, they were false. They were proven false. He wasn't, he said some things. It's believed he was leaned slightly towards socialism at times, and but he definitely was not anti-Semitic. That was proven. I mean, then you brought up Zappa. You go back to the PMRC with him. I mean, this goes all the way back, and you have which kind of lent to cancel culture back in the 1980s with the suicides of teens and the lawsuits against heavy metal bands for things like that. Then, of course, obviously the PMRC, everything that went on with them, everything that went on with the group Two Light Crew. Public Enemy took their share of lumps and faced backlash. Probably, and we have more recent examples, obviously, in cases like Bill Cosby, like you mentioned, R. Kelly, and others. And then, of course, you have now the rising lawsuits and legal issues going on with Houston Texans quarterback Deshaun Watson. I mean, that guy's going to could face some serious backlash over the next few months as things come along. But yeah, going to I mean, Roseanne is another one who clearly was involved in one of the biggest things of the whole cancel culture thing, down to basically when they decided to reboot the Connors. Roseanne was completely changed, and she was written out of the show to some backlash. But believe it or not, surprisingly, it worked out for ABC to remove her from the show. It's worked out pretty well that the show has done well with the core cast minus Roseanne. It's done okay. So, I mean, yeah, but you have the whole Kathy Griffin thing as well, where let's not get into the whole thing, but she pretty much is dropped off the face of the earth for reason. But yeah, there's a lot to sort through here. It's gotten worse, obviously, to the point of it being bullshit in a lot of the cases.
Well, and I'd agree with you. I'd agree with you on that, Jason. That a lot of these things, it's like, why is one thing canceled over another, or why is there a problem with one thing over another? And some of the questions I have about this are kind of who in our society makes the rules about what is moral, right? So with the Pepe Le Pew, for me, it's a cartoon, and it's and anybody who's been to France, if you go to Paris, that's legit. Those guys are all like, even going out for dinner and stuff like that. The guys, and I'd say the guys especially, I noticed we're very flirtatious with the women, and it's just kind of that culture, right? But at the same time, is Pepe Le Pew part of rape culture, or is Pepe Le Pew his canceling xenophobia against the French? You know what I mean? It's okay. I don't know. I mean, does that have the weight? What of these things that we're talking about has the weight to say that they would be canceled? I mean, we had the example earlier about the woman with Teen Vogue and saying some things anti-Asian, but I recall, this was a couple months ago, there was a woman who had, I want to say, a scholarship to I can't remember if it was an Ivy League university, but it's to the school of her choice, and somebody had published something from her on that she had published years ago as a teen on Facebook and brought that back out, and she lost her scholarship. I think that's what had happened in that situation, if you guys remember that. But these things have real consequences when somebody does them, even as a teen. I mean, so certainly people make mistakes growing up, but I think especially now with social media, those mistakes are captured and can be recalled and can come back to harm one.
Well, you mentioned the xenophobia against the French. I don't know if you guys remember back in after September 11th, I believe it was when we invaded Iraq. Actually, it was really the involvement in Iraq. The French decided they wouldn't get involved, and for a time there, French fries were not called French fries. They were called freedom fries. If you remember that.
Yeah.
So there's an example of cancel culture that, kind of had its obtuse rhetoric to it. Actually, in the last few months, this has happened with a WWE wrestler who he was suspended for a while. There's many. It's a storied history with this guy who was finally fired, released. He had on a bodybuilding website made several comments in posts that were anti-gay. I believe racist. He had made all kinds of comments on this bodybuilding website. WWE reacted pretty quickly, suspended him. He disappeared for a while, and then he was eventually released. Now, the irony in all of that is about 8 months ago, maybe a little bit less, as he was trying to come back from it, a video leaked of him. His name is Lars. The wrestler's name is Lars Sullivan. I don't remember what his last name is Smiley. Can't remember his first name. Well, Mr. Smiley had a past in which he filmed pornographic films. Except they were, and now this is after the anti-gay comments came out, it was found out that Lars was in gay porn. So there's your ultimate, there he is sitting there making these comments of anti-gay, and he's doing, had done that in his past. So, I mean, yeah, but I will say sometimes some things in cancel culture do have their place, and sometimes decisions are made that are right as it pertains to cancel culture.
I was also thinking just about what Chad was just saying is that how do these things come about, and who chooses what is important and not. And when we're talking about the Vogue girl, the idea is that it came out more or less, it seems like via the media. And then, of course, what Keith could answer is that also a lot of this is also double checked through like an HR department. So some of this could be work related, some of it could be, media related because the high profileness of her position. But yeah, I think a lot of the media stuff is very interesting, or anything that deals with culture where like a company or whatever isn't involved. But a lot of places are also strictening their rules. And we just heard in the news this week, like Deloitte, one of the biggest insurers in the world, did another Coca-Cola thing where they just had, people come in and they had to have basically witness training again. And their rules are even more strict than anything that you could be basically fired over. the amount of examples that I heard this week are just like, ridiculous and really to the point where if you breathe, somebody can find fault with that. But the media, I think, is a big part of it. What I really wanted to get to is that they're actually digging and looking for information, to bring up
Smear.
stuff like smear. Yes,
Smear.
perfect.
It's a good word for it. It's a smear campaign.
Well, and I would even say, Doug, I would say it's maybe to smear, but I would say even more for ratings, where they get their money. If they can come up with something sensational, follow the money, and if they can come up and break a story, there's some sort of monetary benefit and news related benefit, standing within the organizations. Well, we broke the story on the Teen Vogue editor. You heard it here first.
Right.
The reference to how HR handles it, by the way, it's very frustrating to be in HR and hear the term cancel culture. Oh, you don't want me to be able to voice my opinion. Oh, you're going to get me for things I said in the past. And the HR departments I've been associated with, that's not the intent. The intent is none of the people in HR want to silence the voice of people, even people we disagree with. What we want to do is make sure that your voice is not confused with the company's voice.
Right.
So if you have a Twitter account, do whatever you want. But if you have a Twitter account that you use on behalf of the company and you don't have a separate Twitter account, you'd better make darn sure that whatever you say that is not company related is clearly, screamingly listed as this is not representative of my company. This is my personal view. And a lot of people fail to do that. We had, this is a couple of companies ago, where we had a guy who had about a dozen children. I know the guy, I like him a lot, but he has very, very different political views and very, very different social views than I do. And he would expound enormously about his views on things like pro-life, pro-choice in particular, on his personal Twitter account. But he used that account a lot for business too, a lot to try to represent the company and help the company develop new customers. So it was very, very easy to confuse the two. And we had a lot of back and forth with him about, you got to separate it somehow. You have to find a way to make sure that your views on social issues and such are not confused with the views of the company. We don't want to have we don't have views on it in that regard. And he stuck around. He didn't get fired, but there was a lot of talk about it terminating him because he was very resistant to separating the two pieces of information, if you will. The other thing that's floating through my mind is that the frustration I have that cancel culture belongs to one line of thinking. There's been an enormous amount of backlash from the previous administration in Washington that cancel culture is all about the other side of the aisle and their viewpoints and all that. Both sides are just as guilty as the other.
Absolutely.
I mean, but I think, and maybe this is my own personal bias, but it seems to be a much louder voice on the other side of the aisle for me that seems to be screaming that the people that I seem to resonate with are guilty of it and not the other side. I'm trying not to curse. I'm trying to be good on our podcast, so I'm not going to use the language I want to use here. But that is so wrong. That's so it is so overwhelming from both sides of the aisle, from all sides of everything.
Yeah,
everybody is guilty of it. It's horrific. I'm sorry, I'm getting off the track here.
No, I just thought that the political thing, I also wanted to mention that as well. Also, is just, I think, like a totally different animal, but of the same thing, of cancel culture and the political double standard, that causes, the talking heads that have their opinions, on what's going on. And that's what's spread to like all the people like us. And then I think that like internally within Congress, I just mean all political members, amongst themselves have their own like agenda and the way they see cancel culture and backlash in their own groups. Like either if you're part of a committee or you're part of either Democrat or Republican or independent, and the way they view each other and their inability because of party lines to call out each other. I mean,
Right.
sometimes they do, but it's a rarity. And you
Mhm.
can stand behind some of those that you say, hey, man, that person really took a stand and, went outside their norm and they're doing it, it could be politically motivated, or it could be that they're really following their own beliefs, that they think that there's something being wrong done here. But it doesn't just end with the political scene either, because it also runs into a lot of things that you see in public service and the way that different people in public service, whether it's your police, your local government, all run like I'm trying to explain. There same issues there that rely in politics, which is separate that I think from more of the media stuff and counterculture.
Yeah, and I agree. I think that with the political piece of it, that this is it's weaponized, right? I believe so. Like I think before, and I wish Keith was still at his desk here to answer this question, but I think that prior, before there he is, good. So I think prior, I think I think that the Democrats were shooting for the Republicans, and I think now since the balance of power, the legit balance of power, right, has changed. It's kind of converted and flipped where the Republicans are saying things about the Democrats, but they didn't before. The Republicans didn't have anything to say, didn't necessarily need to say things to the media because they had the power, right? They had the Senate and they had the executive office. And now the Dems have they have pretty much everything, right? Or they're tied in the Senate. So it's a way of making noise to try to convert the public to a different way, I believe. But I see a switch, I think, and how those have been doing. But both sides do it. But I think that they legit don't have power now. So they, whichever group doesn't have power has to try to accomplish their objective in some way.
The reality is, we've obviously fallen completely off the tracks in terms of avoiding politics, but the reality is cancel culture isn't about statues or skunks or Christmas music. It's simply about silencing voices that we don't agree with.
Right.
So naturally, it's going to happen in Washington. Naturally, it's going to happen in state houses because there's not a big difference between things like cancel culture, silencing voices that we don't agree with, and voter suppression and things like that. We're trying to cancel people's ability to express their viewpoints and support what they want to support. And if we don't have enough support in the world for what we want, well, then we have to eliminate the ability of a segment of the population from expressing its support so that we can keep the power. And it would be easy for me to point to one side as opposed to the other, but I think both sides are equally guilty of that. Absolutely.
Well, you mentioned about the power switch. Let's go to the largest example of cancel culture over the last few years, and this is definitely one-sided. This one made the headlines all over the place because this kind of was one of the big examples that started with the Black Lives Matter thing. You had the NFL and Colin Kaepernick, that whole issue, where directly the president himself at the time was pretty much wanted him kicked out of the NFL and all that stuff because of his views. Now, then you had, which he was, but it was more because of his play, because he was benched anyway and was starting to stink up Petco Field or whatever. I forgot what stadium exactly, Candlestick Park. Anyway, Cape signed a large contract, a large deal with Nike for sponsorship and all that stuff. There was a campaign built around his stance and there was a direct line of the scream to boycott Nike, with down to people burning their clothes, cutting swooshes out of their socks and shirts and things like that. The Nike swoosh for this for the campaign that they did. Now, and there's still people who believe it made an impact, but it's been quite readily shown that the cancel culture in that aspect was an utter failure, as Nike and Colin Kaepernick made a shit ton of money. Nike's profits and everything, their profit margins, everything, it went down like, and then if you watch their stock, as their stock took that hit at first, but the stock took more of a hit because at the same time they were doing that campaign, there was a soccer player that they were involved with who had been accused of rape. So that kind of took precedence over the Kaepernick situation. But as you sat there and watched that stock drop, within a week, it had gone back up and then surpassed where it was. So for Nike, the campaign definitely worked out and now Nike's still, Nike. Then of course you had on the opposite spectrum, you had the boycott Goya movement because of comments the CEO made coming out in support of President Trump, which is fine, whatever. You had that obviously the left saying boycott Goya, which some don't even realize is a company based out of New Jersey. They believe it's a foreign company. It's not. They're based out of Jersey. But of course, I mean, just because the guy made a couple campaign contributions and political statements, okay, so what? I don't get it. I mean, for me, this, like I said, the boycott stuff is just, unless there's a legit reason, like even if if a CEO raids a company, yeah, okay, I could see a boycott movement, or has direct involvement in a crime, any kind of crime, violent crime or whatever, I could see something like that. But because they voice their opinion on something, no.
Yeah, well, to take it to the next level of bigger things is, canceling, well, just voicing, just like little things like we see every day is people getting kicked off Facebook or Twitter, which also leads to, I mean, whatever you want to think about it, but it was a huge thing, when they took down Parler, and or like the instances where like Daily Wire, who and who has like Ben Shapiro and stuff, and Matt Walsh, who just, they're conservative voices, and all of a sudden they go through their things and they lose millions of viewers overnight, due to Twitter and YouTube, and and it's a total silencing idea that they could do whatever they want. And Twitter, I mean, I don't want to get into like the whole thing with the president, but I mean, there's other like people that after the president they've taken down, that they just taken them off Twitter, and they're not as popular or as well known as them, but we see that they have the power to do as they want, as well as like Amazon canceling books. And I'm not talking about canceling Dr. Seuss. I'm talking about like other books that have mentioned either different like things on transgenderism or stuff, or even different Christian values and stuff. There's like a small list of books that ushering in with the Dr. Seuss cancellation, they wrote new policies on books, and they got rid of a lot of books. And if you can't be sold on Amazon, you can't be sold anywhere. Basically, they're the biggest distributor in the world. So I
Right.
mean, the same thing with the Amazon servers is they're their biggest ones in the world, and Pollard put up their site on Amazon, and once Amazon got rid of them, they had nowhere to go but to create basically their own internet. You know,
Mhm.
so I mean, from like I said, from us being banned from Facebook for nonsense, right up to like new industries sprouting. They could they have the power to just basically silence or make you disappear in well out of the town square of speaking or doing things.
You also had them trying to ban TikTok a few months ago as well, because they were founded by a Chinese company, but obviously that has gone by the wayside as well. So yeah, I completely understand that, and I mean, I look at it as, like I said, I try to go for what's good for the goose is good for the gander. If you can say something, you should be able to say something, but there have been people who have been recently fired from their job for making their comments about other people. I mean, the whole there's a couple of them in examples of the last few years, last few months actually, after the death of Rush Limbaugh. There were people who were fired for saying, well, he wasn't a great guy, and maybe this planet might be better off without him. Meanwhile, he got away with saying a lot of the things that he did that were very unsavory. And it was kind of like, but obviously that has more to do with listenership or viewership than anything. But yeah, you can lose. There are a lot of these companies are going to lose a ton of business because of doing things like this. You're about to see a ton of changes going on with the whole cancel culture. I mean, even down to recently, I mean, they're calling for Miss Piggy to be removed, which is another one that is just categorically insane to me. But I mean, we all kind of but the thing is with like Pepe Le Pew and Miss Piggy, for a long time that shit was all taken tongue in cheek. You know what I mean? We know they're doing it. It's taken with a grain of salt, though. Now, as to explaining these things to your kids, you have these games and things like that, even like Roblox and games like that. That these they glorify killing and bombing and things like that. But yeah, Pepe Le Pew, bad. I don't I don't get it, But you just when it comes to kids, it's a lot easier to explain and try to guide them through things like this when you just kind of look at the bigger picture of the fact that it's a puppet, a cartoon, and that's what a lot of these things are. You just teach them better. You teach them to know better than to make that kind of judgment. And make assumptions, because I mean, we all know what they say about assumptions. And there's the famous quote of about judgment people in glass houses. So yeah,
Yeah,
it's. Go ahead, Doug.
I was gonna say I'm just mad that they didn't get rid of Pepe Le Pew too. I mean, not Pepe Le Pew, Speedy Gonzalez. But no, uh,
Well,
no. I was gonna say that like we came across like one of the issues was that was the Nick Cannon thing, and that really annoyed me, because he never apologized to, and they let him back, and he
what
was let back without any real like consequences.
I
And
don't remember the Nick Cannon thing. Can you please go into a little bit?
Nick Cannon got hooked up with some shady people. Let's say he went on a podcast and spouted out that some anti-Semitic things and very racist white, very bigoted things against white people, comparing us to Neanderthals, and that the black race is superior.
Right.
So, in any other instance, those people that have said things like that have been fired all the way down the line. This guy, he has a couple meetings with some Jewish leaders, and all of a sudden he's, back on the host of everything and more popular than before.
Well,
And
Eminem got away with it. So
but
there's a good example of.
all right, sure. So I was going to say where this comes into what we're talking about is that with my kids, not Colin as much, but Brendan, he hears and a lot of that, and on and off we watch The Masked Singer and all. So I just was like, whatever. I don't really care. I don't really care to
Yeah.
watch it anymore. But and we explained it a little bit more in depth to Brendan because he had a little bit more interest, and of course, at his age, that he's starting to get into more political things and stuff.
Mhm.
And he didn't think it was right either. But my kids turning on, The Masked Singer still now.
My kids love it. So
Yeah.
I'm not going to stop them from watching it because of something Nick Cannon said. Who gives a shit? He's not even on right now anyway. So
Well, I don't even. Yeah.
yeah,
I
Niecy
know
Nash is
Colin's
hosting
still.
it right now.
Oh yeah, I just know that Colin still really likes it, so that's fine. But it just comes to understanding, with kids and all, and like you're talking about a bunch of issues that really deal with kids, and how Disney now is, trying to distance themselves from like Peter Pan, Dumbo, and stuff, and putting up like all kinds of warnings and stuff, and or taking them off the screen pages so they're more harder to find, or putting age appropriateness on things that we grew up with, and we
Mhm.
know that none of us have ever like decided that, hey, because of the natives we saw in Peter Pan, well, this is the way I'm going to react to them when I see them in real life. Is I don't buy that.
Meanwhile, we took our kids. We took Delana and a couple of her friends to go see. You mentioned Dumbo, the Tim Burton live action one that was released a couple of years ago. Loved it. I mean, they all loved it, and it was. There's no convert. I mean, my wife wouldn't watch it for years because she had a conception that the mother died. I'm like, no, she didn't. The mother's in the end with him, so she's not dead. I mean, that was and Pepe Le Pew. My thought is Pepe Le Pew sucks. So if he's gone, he's gone. Who gives a shit? Now, getting like I mentioned, when we were talking about Nick Cannon, Eminem faced some serious backlash for some of his song lyrics, violence in his lyrics and things like that, and anti-gay comments he had supposedly made or song lyrics he had sang. And I mean, he's apologized and been forgiven. And then there's the ironic twist that one of his best friends is Elton John, and that was after he had done it, made his amends, but that also has something to do with Eminem's addictions and help that was given to him by Elton John, of all people. Ironically, like I said, they became best friends after that. So I mean, there are times when people should be forgiven, or it should just kind of be, okay, you know what? You give them a slap on the wrist. Yeah, I could see that. Eminem, Nick Cannon, whatever. But then there's examples like Cosby and the example of Roman Polanski, um, who isn't even allowed in the United States pretty much at all, and is out of the Hollywood. Tried to get back into the Academy, and was told no for his indiscretions. So that, like I said, sometimes you kind of got to look at things and go, no, I could see maybe putting, obviously, I'm trying to think of the one song in particular from Eminem. If they hear it, I mean, yeah, they're going to hear it, and if they ask questions, you address it the best you can. But then again, there's other songs, like Nine Inch Nails and people like that who have sang some songs that you you have to tread a little lightly with them, and they may take a little explaining, but it's part of life. It's just the way it is. It's part of life. You have to address it the best you can, and know and hope that your kids are smart enough to be able to know what's the better side of things, and figure out right from wrong. But like we've said here and there, cancel culture and this double standard is wrong.
I would agree with that. And I think with the kid stuff, a lot of, rap music now is popular, but if you listen to rap music, like you were saying with Eminem, there's a lot of things in there that and it depends, of course, on the rapper and those kinds and in this particular song. But my experience is that there's quite a bit of things within those songs that is not real respectful of society. And that the kids today, we're hoping that they listen to that they're that they know it's a song, and they understand that it's a song and not a way to act. But I also do see the power in words. But at the same time, I also believe that each individual is responsible for their own behavior.
Yep.
So, but and the one thing I was going to say is going back a little bit. I feel like some of the stuff that we have in cancel culture, it gets started, and a lot of times I think we see it in the news, of course, but then it seems like many times the corporations really bow to it really quickly because they're not interested in the controversy, and to some extent, just like I think it was Doug that had mentioned it earlier, individuals don't want to be associated with a certain thing, and they can't really voice support over a position that's not. They can't hold a different viewpoint than the mainstream, as kind of how I'll position it here, without potentially suffering repercussions. I think that's how the corporations are as well. So when you see some of these large companies like Disney changing up how they, how they label their movies, and I don't know who makes it, but it's like the Aunt Jemima. It's a whole different label now, and the Land O'Lakes, and all that stuff. It's just immediately they just change because they don't want the controversy. But and I will say it's even impacted in Colombia. There was a candy down there that I still enjoy it, but it's called Besos de la Negra, and it's like kisses from the black woman. And it was basically like a vanilla with chocolate on the outside. Man, it's good stuff. But now I think now it's just called Besos or something like that. Its name has changed there as well. So it's even reached into Colombia, some of these things. But they did remove the figure of the black woman who was on the packaging. But so I was going to say, so some of it, with corporations, like I feel like many times they contribute and they support the cancel culture because it's so easy. Like if somebody points that gun at him, right, and says, "You're doing this. You have this comic character, or you have this thing within your company that you're making money from. they will change it because they don't want the controversy.
Yeah, I was also going to say, as one of my last few points I've written down today for today's show was also that sometimes an individual or a bunch of small instances can ruin an entire organization. And we've seen that with the Boy Scouts, church, people from the church, with even recently Black Lives Matter. Some of the heads of that have been brought up on some very serious charges. And I mean, and these are the things that the people remember. They don't remember that they went to church on Sunday and how good they felt. They don't remember that the Boy Scouts and the morals that they taught their kids and how they taught their kids to be very independent. What they remember is, this scout leader did that. This priest, did you hear about what he did and how many kids they caught that he had been with? And, there's so many organizations, and the same thing with the police, that you could see these things where it's like a couple bad apples can ruin an entire organization.
Yep. Agree.
Right. Anybody else have anything they want to add before we start to wrap this up, as we're coming up here around an hour? Don't all talk at once.
I
Where's
think
Kate?
if I contributed at this point, we would go for about 3 hours because I'm having a rare time in our podcast where I'm experiencing emotion, and it's extremely negative emotion. For anybody who can't see that the image of a Black slave woman on a product is highly inappropriate and thinks that it shouldn't be removed, I am saddened at what I could easily go into as ignorance. No one is suggesting that we go fetch all the bottles out of everyone's houses and cancel them from the past. But it was finally recognized that it was wrong and that it should be corrected. And I can't even begin to fathom why that would be a question.
Right.
But the world is, you're removing a legendary label from a bottle of maple syrup, so that's cancel culture. I think it's horrendous to think it's anything but moving us to where we should have been probably years ago, and representative of the attitudes of a vast majority of our population that would suggest that we should remove images like this. No one's suggesting that we take a skunk from the mid 1940s and go back and burn all of the images and all of the cartoons that he was a part of. But we shouldn't be doing that anymore. No one's suggesting that we go into history and remove all the images of the Washington Redskins football team. But we shouldn't glorify our abuse of Native Americans going forward. In fact, we've been talking about that subject for 30 or 40 years, and that should have been done a long time ago. People just didn't have the goddamn balls to make the change.
Right.
This is not cancel culture. This is recognizing the values of who we are as a population now and moving forward and making adjustments going forward. Removing statues is not canceling what happened in the past. It's recognizing how we feel now. And it irritates me to no end that there's a piece of our population that's more than just negligible, that actually thinks that these things are wrong. And I am not interested in the argument that, kids know better. No, our kids only know better when we teach them better. And they know better enough so that they're offended by all this crap and they want it removed. A much larger portion of this country's youth wants this crap removed. And the very much smaller, I won't say tiny, but the much smaller minority of this country that fights for control by suppressing voters and doing other things of that nature is trying desperately to blame the majority of this country for cancel culture and all the terrible. You're trying to remove our history. We're not trying to remove the history. We are trying to build a new future, a future that is representative of the values of the people of this country and of the world. You know, racism and xenophobia and all of those lovely words we like to use is not representative of the majority of people, but the minority is really goddamn loud. And they'll do anything, hurt anyone to keep their power, including using racism and xenophobia and all those other things to divide us instead of to bring us together. I feel like a campaign commercial because words do fucking matter. Sorry, Linda, I couldn't resist.
So Keith, let me ask this question to you. So with the Aunt Jemima, like when you look at that image, why would you assume that woman is a slave?
The history books are very clear about where that image came from.
No. The image, when you look at the image of that, 'cause my interpretation of that image, that looks like a Southern lady, and I've spent a lot of time in the South, looks like a Southern lady who cooks good food.
In the vacuum,
To me,
I totally agree with you.
That is not an image for me that is associated with slavery.
Right. In a vacuum, I totally agree with you. But having the knowledge of where they got the image from, I absolutely want it removed.
That's not true. That's not true. That is not where they got the image from.
Well, then prove me wrong, because everything I've read says that's where they got the image from.
The image was a real woman. She worked the campaign for them. And that image started, I believe, I will get the exact date. It was in the 1915, 1916. She was a campaign spokesman for Aunt Jemima.
Well,
It was
I want to
Mrs.
hear more
Butterworth
information
that
about
was
this
told.
because that's not what I've heard at all.
Absolutely. She was at the Chicago World's Fair one year, campaigning and working for the company. She was real. Aunt Jemima was based on a real woman, not a slave.
And your time frame is completely different than the time frame that I have read about and studied about and heard about from many different
Mrs.
sources.
Butterworth, yes. Aunt Jemima, no. Aunt Jemima was a real woman who dressed like that.
Oh, I know. I'm not disputing that it was a real person. I know it was built based on a real person. But the time frame is at least 30, 40, 50 years off from everything I've been told.
No, it's 50 years later. It was not this company started in the early part of the prior to World War I, actually, I believe. But I will look it up and get the information. But I know.
Look, I appreciate this knowledge and this potentially new information. I don't want to get hung up on one particular example. I'd be thrilled each and every time to be proven wrong if everything I've been told is incorrect on each individual example. But society-wide, there are a number of stereotypes that are are based in racism and inappropriate thinking, and forget all these fancy words we use. In thinking that keeps people divided and keeps people thinking they're not equal. And that's what we're trying to change, because society changed a long time ago. And my kids know better because my kids were raised in a house where they were taught that this was inappropriate stuff. But there's such ignorance in this country that it is dangerous. You know, I banned, well, we didn't call it cancel culture back then, but I did this in another podcast, and I can't remember the name of the video game, Grand Theft
Grand
Auto.
Theft Auto.
Thank you. That was a topic in my house because my ex-wife, at the time, my wife, bought it for my kids without telling me, knowing that I didn't want it in the house. And it was there exactly one day, and I took it out of the mechanism and put it in the box and said, this is going back to the store, and that's exactly where it went. Because my kids would know not to go out there and shoot people and run them over with cars. But there's a lot of ignorant people out here who don't teach their kids that, and that's where that crap comes from. You know, the person who shot up the spas in Atlanta last week, where do you think the belief system comes from? It comes from old racist stereotypes, and it comes from poor parenting, not necessarily that individual, but in many cases. You're right. We're up against an hour, and I don't want to belabor it because this could go for weeks. I'm not even just hours. This is an extremely irritating topic to me because if we don't stop perpetuating the images of inappropriate thinking and behavior and inequality in particular, there's enough ignorance out there to simply make it continue to exist until the end of time. So I have no problem with people who say, you know, enough is enough with Pepe Le Pew. Enough is enough with a skunk from the past. Move forward without the skunk. They want to get rid of Miss Piggy? If Miss Piggy is perpetuating images that are body shaming young girls because of their weight, maybe it's time for Miss Piggy to go.
That's not why they're going after Miss Piggy.
I don't know. Today's podcast is the first time I'd heard anything about Miss Piggy. I don't even know what the hell's going on there.
It's about her pursuit of Kermit more than anything.
All right, I'm going to have to wrap myself around that because I have no idea what that would mean. But I have no problem confronting all of these practices we've had and examining whether or not they perpetuate thinking of people as being unequal. And if they do, then it may be time to move forward without those images. Not to burn the past, not to cancel what has happened already, but to move forward in a more appropriate way. And both sides are just as guilty as the other of trying to use this as a weapon rather than as something as productive.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So
Yeah,
I will get off my high horse, and as soon as we stop recording, I will beat the crap out of you. Sorry, never mind. See, I didn't do that, Linda. I didn't put that finger up. That wasn't me.
Doug, you got anything else you want to add before we head out of here?
No, not really. I mean, I said a lot, and I mean, I take what Steve said, seriously, as well as what we've all said, and re-examine maybe some of our comments of what we did discuss today against the measure of what Keith unveiled on us in the past 2 minutes. And
We're like 7.
all right. And no, but with my boys, like I said, there was that example, and double standards, like I said, there's lots to talk about. They go down different paths. And also, we have talked in the past, but I did want to also mention that there are double standards within your own home and your own lifestyle. And the example that you set, not double standards, for you and your kids, with the way that you present yourself in public, whether it's, being slow to anger, the way you drive, the way you treat other people in public, the way you talk about them under your breath, your kids see that. And if you're telling your kids, hey, you shouldn't be doing this, well, you should also watch your own example. And I know we've talked about double standards within the family before and different shows, but I just also wanted to mention that I also was thinking of that as well. And, you know, as well as the many different things that we talked about today with cancel culture versus just right out silencing people. And it's all real stuff. And we all need to be tuned in. And we all also have the benefit to change. And you can see that. And it's hard to judge if a person's truly changed or they just did it for lip service. But, you know, there's always that. And knowing that, you know, that people can change is a great thing. That's all.
I'd just like to say, you know, with cancel culture and trying to mute other voices, for me, it's a very important thing to have multiple perspectives on different topics. And, you know, the value of in our society and our democracy is that we have the ability to share our opinions, and that our opinions are diverse, and that makes us a better society. I do not like things that come into conflict with that idea. So, you know, cancel culture is one of those things that I think can come into play with this. It's important to have multiple diverse opinions.
Right. I think that's a pretty good place to end for today. We will revisit this again, I am sure, as there has been an uptick in this kind of thing lately, and we're finding out the more things change, the more they stay the same. Hopefully, we are heading into a different time and a different place. Now we are. What we make of it is what we make of this will become what we can dictate future events and ways to deal with this, both within our family and within society. So from all of us here at Dads on Life, and of course my dog, take care, everybody.
Have a good one.
Enjoy the weekend, folks.
See you next week.